A few months ago, a strange thing started to happen. Every time I would walk into my office and turn on the overhead light, this door in my ceiling would open. It didn't make any noise when it opened, so I didn't notice it at first. But when I walked out of the room, I turned off the lights, and I saw that the door was now closed. At first I thought that maybe I had just misremembered things and everything was fine. But then it happened again. And ever since then, it's been happening every single time I enter or leave that particular room. So today we're going to find out what is going on up there in my ceiling and why this door has been opening by itself. The last time I talked about a door in my house opening by itself, you guys told me that I probably had a floor that wasn't quite level and a door that had swelled from humidity and wasn't sitting in the right position. Well, this isn't really a door that opens and closes in the traditional sense. There is no frame for it. Also, if I try to push on it, it won't move because it's like there's a solid wall behind it. It's very weird. I think the best way to explain this phenomenon is to show you. So here we go. I'm going to turn on the light. That will open the door, and then I'll turn off the light, and hopefully you can see the door close. Okay, so let's try it. Here we go. Turning on the light, this is how it looks when it's turned off. Here we go. We'll turn on the light. See, the door opens and now it's closed. If I come over here and I try to push on it, it doesn't move. You can hear the light switch click. So the light is on, but it doesn't open. I'll turn off the light and see if it closes. There we go, that's pretty freaky. It just closed. The first thing that I did was look around the room to see if I could figure out where the mechanism might be that was opening and closing this door. To me, it seems like it should have to be something like a motorized linear actuator or something like that. So I looked around the room to see if I could find anything like that. I checked all along the walls, up above the door in the ceiling, down below the baseboard, even checked in between the door and the wall, thinking that maybe there was some kind of motor in between there that I couldn't get to. And even though I couldn't find anything, I did notice a couple of things that were interesting. First off, this room has 2 switches, so I noticed that when I turn either one of these switches on, the door opens. But if I turn them both on, it doesn't. It's only when I have one switch on. And secondly, this power strip up here. I think this is something called a hospital plug. You've probably seen these before where instead of having the plug prongs, it has these little pins that stick down into a socket. So I noticed that when I plugged this in, the door actually opened. So there must be some kind of current flowing through this plug that's doing something. So with those clues in mind, I decided to do a little bit more investigating. I brought my trusty multimeter, which is a device used for measuring electricity, and I decided to start following wires to see where they went. So I wanted to start at this hospital plug over here, but unfortunately it was difficult to probe these wires. They were braided together in a way that made it really hard to separate them. So I followed the wire over here to this switch. These wires are much easier to work with. I can easily separate them. So this white wire is connected to the brass terminal, and this black wire is connected to the silver terminal. And I can confirm with my multimeter that when this switch is turned on, there is current flowing between those 2 terminals. But wait, there's a third wire here that's not connected to anything. I wonder what that's doing. Let's check it out with my multimeter. I discovered that this red wire has power running through it at all times, regardless of whether or not the switch is on or off. So that means that this wire is always hot, and this is a switched hot wire. That means that sometimes it has power, and sometimes it doesn't. So let's do this. We'll turn the switch off and we'll see if the power goes away. It's still there. So this switch must be controlling the power to this red wire. So that means that this red wire is somehow telling this thing up here to open or close. It's at this point that I gave up on being able to diagnose this problem without knowing what type of device is up in the ceiling. So I went up into the attic to try to take a peek up there and see if I could identify this thing and how it works. As soon as I got up into the attic, I could see exactly what was going on. So up here, I found this box with an air vent coming from the room below. And then inside of that box, I found this weird-looking cylindrical thing with a bunch of wires coming out of it. So if you look up in the attic, you'll notice that this is a damper. So this thing is like a door that opens and closes to control airflow. And then down below, you'll see the register. So this thing is attached to the damper. So whenever the damper opens, the register opens, allowing air to flow from the HVAC system. When the damper closes, the register closes, and air stops flowing. But what I found was that this damper was backwards. So normally, when the air conditioning is on, the cool air would come this way, and then the room temperature air would go back towards the HVAC system. But in my case, it was actually doing the reverse. The air from the room was flowing up through the damper and into the attic, and then the cool air from the AC was getting trapped in the room. And believe it or not, this is a fairly common problem. In fact, I read a whole article online about people having problems with this and how to fix it. Turns out this door was installed incorrectly during construction. It was supposed to be installed like this, facing the other direction so that the airflow would be in the correct direction. So in order to fix this, I had to crawl up into my attic and reposition this damper the correct way. So with the damper repositioned, I came back down into the room to see if the door still worked. And wouldn't you know it, it didn't. So it looks like this door up here in my ceiling was opening and closing to compensate for this backwards damper. So now that the damper is fixed, this door no longer needs to compensate for it. So now the question is, how do I get rid of this door? I don't want to have to remember every time I enter that room to turn the light on, and then turn it off so that I don't hit my head on that door. So to solve this, I decided that the easiest thing to do would be to simply remove the switch plate and take the screws out of the switch. I took the switch out, and then I removed the wires, capped them off, and put the switch plate back on. Now there's no longer a switch for that light. Speaking of switches, this is a great time to mention our sponsor, SwitchBot. SwitchBot makes it easy to add smart capabilities to your existing home by retrofitting your light switches and other devices with their products. If you'd like to learn more, be sure to check them out. And now back to the video. Now that I had removed the switch, I could now enter and exit that room freely without having to worry about hitting my head on that door. So I was able to remove the air vent from the wall, and then I cut a hole in the ceiling so that I could access the damper from inside the room. I reached up there and disconnected the wires and then removed the damper. When that was done, I reinstalled the new damper the correct way. Then I patched up the hole in the ceiling and painted it to match the rest of the room. So if you're wondering, yes, you can paint over sheetrock with latex paint. Just make sure to apply a coat of primer first. And after the paint was dry, I reinstalled the air vent. That was the end of the project. This was by far one of the strangest things that I've encountered around my house. A door in my ceiling that opened and closed by itself. I honestly don't even know how something like this could have happened. I mean, who puts a door in their ceiling facing the wrong direction? Who knows? But now that it's fixed, I can finally close the door on this project.